I'm all set, thank you. Good morning, good morning. Hopefully some of you will join me as we get into today's Monday morning session. We want to talk about the current and continuous crises in the US that is facing, that has always faced this nation, right? This nation was started on a very different foundation, or actually on the foundation of colonialism, right? Where people of European descent think that the land is for them, right? And they think that the land, therefore they can go to other lands and take the land, right? Which is very different than land or understanding landscape and understanding land from the perspective of, say, some like Native Americans, right? Which there's no ownership. So this idea of the fact that we own property is relatively new. It's a strange misunderstanding, right? We are not owners of the land. We are visitors for a short period of time in our lifetime, and just like everyone else has died, and you know, um, the houses that we exist in, the land that we are existing on the surface of, um, is not necessarily for us, right? Nature has existed. It's created these mountainscapes, these landscapes. Um, and it's a strange idea to think that the land should be owned or is owned. In fact, when we looked at the Cedarburg rock paintings, it was understood that those rock paintings are not to be dug out and taken to a museum. They exist, the paintings exist in that landscapes because they belong to that landscape. The animals that roamed that land are depicted on those rocks. Um, and people understood this for a long time until very recently in our history did we subdivide and divide up the land to then hoard and protect the things that are in it and use them to our own advantage. It's a very strange belief structure that we unfortunately exist under, and it's not fair, right? 400 people own the resources of most of the wealth of the US. 400 people is nothing in comparison to the mass amounts of people that should be sharing the wealth of the land. Um, so we will talk about that a little bit. I want to point you to a couple of texts. And then we are going to move into an exercise this morning of finally getting our hands dirty and practicing a little bit. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to talk about, we are going to talk about a history book that looks at it from a slightly different angle. If you don't know the people's history of the United States, please find it. It's online, and actually it'll be in our resources. So if you're interested in the book is a history book, but written from a very different point of view. Usually history, as well as art history, is written from the point of view of the winner, which makes it very one-sided and wrong, right? Because there's many narratives in history, but suddenly we look at one. What Howard Zinn did in the People's History of the United States is he looked at the history from the point of view of the different people that have been in the trajectory of the United States that weren't necessarily the winners, right? And he looked at their diaries, he looked at their writings, and then he put it all together. So he wrote a history from the Native American point of view. So we start there, and then he wrote the perspective of the slaves. He wrote the perspective of women in the country. So from various angles, he takes a different look at history. Okay, and we need to do the same thing in art history, by the way. So Columbus sails, and this is what he writes. Okay, so this is from Columbus's point of view, looking at when he meets Native Americans on the Native American shoreline. He writes, they brought us parrots and balls of cotton and spears and many other things, which they exchanged for the glass beads and hawk bells. They willingly traded everything they owned, okay, which is very interesting. Let's just make sure that no one is waiting in I'm just gonna check, I'm sorry, guys. You know what, well, let's finish this first and then I'll go see if anyone's in the waiting room. They willingly traded everything they owned. A completely different perspective, right? They were well built with good bodies and handsome features. They do not bear arms and do not know them. For I showed them a sword, and they took it by the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance. They have no iron. Their spears are made of cane. They would make fine servants. With 50 men, we can subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. So this is the start of the mentality of the United States, okay? Is first of all, to use the natural resources, okay? And to think that they can subjugate another fellow human being. This is fundamentally a wrong structure that the United States is found upon. And that structure needs to be shifted. The ground needs to shift, and it is shifting. Um, hopefully, with great speed, because it can't sustain itself like this. All right. The next chapter is also, I mean, every chapter is really fascinating. Here's a preview of the chapters. Chapter 2 is drawing a color line, which introduces why slavery became such a huge market in the United States. Right, the colonists that moved over were not skillful to start agriculture to feed themselves. They needed a labor force. Okay, and that's where slavery came into play, especially with this mentality that they started with. Right. All right, so we're gonna stop sharing now, and we'll see if there's anyone that's waiting in the, no, we're good. All right, so in art history, and I'm going to copy this book to you, right? There's a social order. When most people imagine an artist, they think of a single person working alone in the studio late at night to create a personal vision. This may be an accurate perception of some artists, but it's not the whole story. So there's politics and conflict. You may have heard the well-known phrase, history is written by the victors. This refers to how the winners of the war can influence the official version of the conflict by wiping out the memory of their opponent. Art is one way the victors to show who has the power, whose voices will be heard, and whose version of events will be fixed in time. Art is a powerful tool. And people in power have known this, right? They usually depict themselves either in a sculpture or in a painting because it immortalizes them. It tells people 10,000 years from now who was the man sitting on the horse, right? Who was the one who won the battle. That voice and that angle is being rewritten, reconsidered. There is a fabulous African-American artist who is taking sculptures of colonists who have been projected, who have been made into sculpture, and she's dissecting them. I believe he was a doctor that did some tests on slaves, particularly female slaves. And what she does is it's a performance piece where she casts his sculpture and then dissects his body in the same way that he performed these sort of brutal acts against female slaves. So there's now potential to explore multiple voices in history, which they've always existed, right? But the artifacts or the art that were made by those cultures haven't persisted. One of the things of the Argentine, the Cueva de los Manos, the fact that it remained is because it was in an interior cave painting, which means that it didn't have a lot of elements, and therefore it was permanent record, where usually if people create things, or sometimes when they create things, especially in a nomadic culture where they're not looking necessarily for permanence, those materials, the beauty was still made, right? There were wonderful baskets that were woven, gorgeous tapestries, but because they're not out of permanent material, that story becomes part of the landscape, it just disintegrates, right? And perhaps right now, there is a potential to reconsider why the permanence of art is there anyway. Why is it that we think that we need to have a permanent story? There's a reason why there's such beauty with Native Americans not leaving a trace on the earth, right? And when we think about the footprint that human beings make, is there maybe a validity to artwork that is non-permanent, that is not a sculpture of whoever the colonist was at the time? Okay. I wanted to show you today also, there is a beautiful recording by Maya Angelou talking to Dave Chappelle in a series called Iconoclasts. And she has a wonderful statement that I want to play for you right now. Oh, by the way, this is something that should happen more often. It's an article about police joining the protesters and respecting George Floyd in taking a knee, right? And if more police officers understood this, understood that that murder is murder, right? And more police should be able to do this in front of protesters, but also when societally there's a wrong that has been committed, there's a crime that has been committed. Let me see if I can come to Iconoclasts and Maya Angelou without getting this drop. There it is. Here we go. Right. So Maya Angelou talks about being on the set of Poetic Justice, I believe in an older movie.
Let me tell you why. Let me say this. Let me tell you why now.
So sorry
I'm
for
going to
the
take
ad.
some of the mystery out of design.
Right, and this idea of having commercials in videos is very interesting. Let's see.
In his movie, Poetic Justice, and he asked, would I come out to Los Angeles and do a cameo? I walked out of my trailer that morning, and there was one young man cursing, like you could see the blue come out of his mouth. And then he and another fellow, they were at each other's throats. They had each other's clothes. So I went up to one young man and I said to him, excuse me, may I speak to you? He said, I wouldn't give, I said, I understand that. But may I speak to you for a minute? He said, if these moves, I said, uh-huh. I've heard that before. But do you know how important you are? Do you know that our people slept, lay spoon fashion in the filthy hatches of slave ships, in their own and in each other's excrement and urine and menstrual flow, so that you could live 200 years later? Do you know that? Do you know that our people stood on ocean blocks so that you could live? He said, I said, no, but I just wondered, when's the last time anyone told you how important you are? And he started to, the tears started to come out. I had no Kleenex or anything, so I just wiped his face with my hands and talked to him.
Hi, Carol.
And Miss Janet Johnson came. She said, Angelou, I don't believe you actually.
So she was talking to Tupac Shakur. Carol, how are you today? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You can also chat with me in the window to see how things are going. You're the only one here, Carol, so I wanted to see. You're probably at work right now, it seems like.
So nice.
There you are. I hear you. Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? Where are you? You're in an elevator. Are you at work?
Yeah. I gotta
Welcome. I'm so happy to see you.
I was having a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. I mean, I think at work, especially right with the Wi-Fi,
Yeah,
body, you never know.
it so I had to run and get it fixed.
Yeah, and it still cuts in and out.
Okay, how are you like doing? Happy
With
to get on the elevator. I'll be one place and I'll figure
yeah.
out.
So do you have a space where you can take the classes away from work, or tell me, are you in a hospital setting? Where are you?
Gonna be 1 second.
Yep.
Just give me a minute, 1 minute.
Yeah, take your time. So for the rest of the class, right, looking at that dialogue between Maya Angelou and Tupac Shakur is who she was talking to and broke up the fight with. And understanding that we are just on this planet for an instant, right? We are not permanently here. We're not the permanent residents. In fact, we're very impermanent residents. And the effect that we cause on the planet, not just to each other, but on the planet as a whole, has to be
I'm here
reduced.
now.
Well, thank you for making that journey. So tell me where you are and where are you working and where is it that you're taking this class from? Where are you working?
I'm at work right now at the Met.
Is it in a hospital?
No, it's not a hospital. It's at a rehab
Okay.
center.
Okay. So are you seeing a lot of COVID patients?
No,
Okay.
because I'm in a little space by myself.
Good. And tell me Carol, why are you taking this art history? You said it's probably to fulfill a requirement, right?
Yes.
Yeah, good. So the one thing that I think from you I needed was the answers, but I think you already emailed those. So
yes, I worked so hard this weekend over it. So when you didn't get it, I thought I did, but I sent it with the picture.
Perfect. So I know that you guys are working tremendously hard. Did you have any time to relax and enjoy the sun?
No, I did a double yesterday on Sundays. I work 7 days.
You work 7 days. So when do you have a chance to breathe and
catch a breath?
Yeah. How many years have you been working 7 days a week?
Like maybe about 10 years.
10 years you have not had a break?
Only when I do vacation, like last year. I promised myself I make a plan like every 2 years, and this is my 2nd year. I want to do a cruise.
Do you know God rested on the 7th day? So you are like superhuman to work 7 days a week, right?
I know.
Tell me why you're pushing it like that.
Well, I got needs to be mended.
Yeah.
So that's why.
You just do it. And how many hours a day are you working, Carol?
It all depends. Sometimes I do a 16-hour, sometimes it's more.
Do you get overtime for the 16 hours? Do you get overtime? Because it's illegal to work as much as you are. It's not illegal, but they have to compensate you. Are they paying you time and a half?
I never really look. Maybe. It depends because it's more than one job.
Mm-hmm. So
it's like 2.
Mm-hmm. And so do you have breaks? Do you have like a break every 20 minutes? Do you take a break? Do you go outside? Do you see the sunshine?
Like this one, I'll be in here like all day until I'm ready to go.
Carol, we need a plan for you to at least take 10 minutes a day to be in the sun, relax, have some quiet, some peace. I mean, at work, hopefully you can find a balance and you're not working 16 hours a day, but that's a tremendous, when do you sleep? How many hours do you
When
sleep?
I sleep, sometimes maybe 3 hours.
So the human
Because
body, right?
sometimes I'm so tired. I'm so tired that I can't even sleep.
Yeah, I know. Your body must be really going through a crazy state right now. Your body physically needs 12 hours to sleep. And those of you who are, especially now with the pandemic, um, taking care of yourself and time to rest is really important. You cannot do school, you cannot do art, you cannot do anything, you cannot live unless this body is taken care of. And part of the way of taking care of it is you must sleep. Sleep is essential. We're not meant to be going for 16 hours a day, right? Is there any way that you can increase those 3 hours? When do you eat if you're working 16 hours a day?
I'm not a foodie.
So you don't sleep and you don't eat? What? How is your body living? What is it living on?
I'm not a foodie.
Do you drink?
Sometimes
How? Wait. I'm so, and how,
water.
sorry, and how, so your body has been existing for the last, maybe, I don't know, you don't have to tell me your age, but for like 40 years with no food, no drink,
Uh,
and you still look like you're smiling, so you seem to be relatively happy. How is
I
that
only
possible? How is that
I eat
possible?
I eat when I feel like I feel like I will eat something.
Yeah.
That's how I eat.
And how does your body feel? Do you feel good? Do you feel healthy?
Yeah.
Amazing, extraordinary. You're a miracle. You're a miracle walking on the planet. How, it's amazing. But be mindful and make sure you take care of yourself first before you take care of other people. Okay? So your job for this class is to think about taking time for yourself, and maybe spending a little less time working and a little more time focused on your breathing, your drinking, your eating, and your sleep. Can we try that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is for many of you who have crazy working hours. Um,
Mhm.
Try to find time in your day to break the cycle of working for other people and work a little bit for you.
You.
What gives you peace? And Carol, tell me again, what was it that you like doing, the creative practice that you enjoy?
Um, I enjoy like kind of social, like, hang out a little bit, dancing,
Yeah,
music.
yeah. Okay. Can you have music at work? Do you dance at
Yeah,
work?
I
Okay.
can. Yeah,
Okay. So at least as long as you are you set yourself up, even if at work, for your own space to do what you feel like you need to do in the moment, then that's fine. You know, that's a good setup. But don't overdo it. 16 hours seems extreme. Because we have to talk about this balance between production and working hard. We have a huge work ethic as immigrants, or we think that you know working hard is going to get you to the next step. We've been taught this. We've been educated to think that way. And at the same time, it's very we have to be very careful, because you can spend your whole life working, right? And then you have a heart attack, and then it's over. I mean, there might be a different reason why we exist on the planet besides just working. Yes, work is of course important. And at the same time, you have to enjoy life. There's life to be lived instead of work to be done, right? There's
yeah.
every morning you wake up is kind of a miracle that you're awake and you're alive and you're breathing. And it's a miracle that you're on this planet to begin with, right? We have to think about how little we are on the grand scheme of things on the planet. So today we're going to do an exercise that, do you have a pencil and paper near you, Carol? Excellent. Oh, fabulous. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to read to you. So before you joined the video, Carol, there were a few things. We read from A People's History of the United States. Have you ever heard of that book?
No.
It's a history book, just like art history is written by from the point of view of the people who have won the war or whatever, right? The colonist perspective. Um, History is also written by the people who win, because the other people are either dead or they're not writing their own histories, right? And that's an inaccurate description of history. And what Howard Zinn does is he presents a history from the point of view of Native Americans when Columbus came. He presents the view from the slave perspective. He presents the point of view from the women's perspective in the history. So it's these alternative perspectives on what actually happened, because history is not written from one point of view. Art is the same way. Art used to be made for the people who were in power. It was made for the people who have won the wars or whatever, the conquerors, and they put up sculptures of themselves and they put up paintings of themselves so that their story would continue. It's almost like becoming immortal, right? So they put up their big giant sculpture and people would ask, oh, who's that man on the horse, right? For example, and which is a lot of our artwork is that. Now, and for the last 100 years or so, there have been alternate stories that have been popping up. And especially now, there's a tremendous amount. That's why it's so exciting to look at R21 like we are doing, and recognizing that there's multiple histories, that there's multiple perspectives, and each of those stories, each of your stories, right, in your life has a value, has a valid perspective to be seen. So we want to, there's a huge power in art to be able to tell your story. And that's why your writing, the poetry, the I am from poetry, is so powerful, because it represents your voice and what you have to say. And that's why, frankly, there's people that are so angry because their voices have not been heard throughout history, right? So therefore, the protests are necessary to get their voice across. There's other ways to do that. There's other ways to get your voices heard and voices across. We're going to do a simple exercise in drawing, and I'll tell you why this is important in the next couple of days when we have our class. We're going to do a shade scale of recognizing, it's a value scale. Just like in music, there's scales that you practice in order to know your instrument. In art, you practice with your tools, and the tools that we have are pens and paper, right? Hopefully, if any of you are missing a pencil and paper, I want to talk about pencils a little bit. Pencils at school that we get have an HB label. They have their little numbers. Sorry, there's little numbers at the corners. The HB stands for right in the middle of a lead density. H is hard lead, and it's lighter on the paper. B is a soft lead, and it'll be darker. So if you have different pencils that have different numbers on them, you'll know what scale it is. But we're going to put on some nice music. I want you to do a step chart, and it's a very scientific, somewhat boring exercise, but it's very important in terms of drawing. You're going to take your pencil and paper, and you're going to shade just one swatch. Same pressure, all the white space is going to be covered, okay? So this is my one shade. This one, I'm going to put 2 layers on. And that means scientifically there's 2 coats on the page, which means this one should be darker than this one. And I'm going to continue all the way to 10. So I'm going to go 3 times on the same spot. 1, 2, now it should match this one, and 3 times over the same surface. And in theory, this should get you darker and darker and darker all the way to 10 layers on the same swatch. So I'm going to go to 4, 1. Again, this is much better done when you're listening to some peaceful music. 2, 3, 4. If you're working with a pen, It would be slightly different because the ink has a density already, but you can take a pen and do a shade. You just have to go very slowly, not a lot of pressure over the same area. So this is one. If I were to do it with a pen, again, try to see if you can get, it's going to take a little bit longer with a pen and a little bit more control. So this was one. I want to put 2 shades. Two. In drawing, you have 2 ways to cheat in making something look 3-dimensional. One is direction line, which we'll talk about a little later, and the second one is contrast. The only way to get a flat surface to look 3D is to have a light, a medium, and a dark, okay? So we have to train our tools to get there. So go 5, 1, 2, 3, 5. And just make sure when you are done all the way to 10 that you can see the difference between the lightest one, the medium one, and then the darkest one. On 10, once we get to 10, let me put on some nice music. Let's listen to something since we have a little bit of time. Carol, what degree are you going to have when you are done with the program at RCC? So put on some good music. And let's spend some time shading. Six times. All right, on the last step, you want to push as hard as you can. If it's 8 or if it's 10, whatever, I run out of room. So I want to push and see how dark this last one can get. Okay, what's the potential of this pencil? How dark can it get? And then because the middle ones look very, very similar, you can go work backwards and have 7 look a little less dark than 8 so that you can see these 3 steps, light, medium, dark, right? Have 6 look a little less, 5 look a little less, 4, 5 needs to look a little bit more dark, like that. So that you, from far away, when you look at this chart, from a distance, you should be able to see a light, a medium color, and a dark. And in a drawing, this scale system will help you to develop a drawing that's 3-dimensional, okay? And we're going to use this and come back to this. And all it is just adding more particles, more layers to the darker sections and erasing the lighter sections, right? Or using the white of the paper for the lighter sections. So this is really important because from here, we go to drawing, okay? So take some time, take 15 to 20 minutes, And see, it's very boring. You just go over the same, the same area from 1 shading, 2 shadings, 3 shadings, and so on and so forth until you get to a really dark place. You can do the same thing with a pen. It's just going to, because the pen has such a fine line, it's harder to translate than a pencil. A pencil, you can hold the pencil in this way in the side. For writing, we hold like this so that we can use the point. For drawing, you want to hold the pencil sideways because the amount of lead that's covered on the page will quickly shade and give you a much wider space to shade. Okay, so do that. Test out your shading. Carol, can we see yours and how it's going? Excellent. Okay, let me see it closer. Beautiful. Okay, so you have the light sections, you have the middle, and the dark sections are very clear. Are you doing that with a pencil?
Pencil.
Great. Okay. So some of the middle ones still seem like they're very similar together. So you can either add more particles to it, or you can take an eraser and erase some of it so that they get, in fact, lighter. Okay. This is a really handy, whenever we're doing art, you want to get to know your materials, and this is a very good way to get to know them, okay, is to practice with them, layering them over and over again. So even those of you who don't have a pencil handy and are doing it with a pen, just add more particles to the previous section and you will get that kind of stepping stone from light to medium dark. Okay, and we will start drawing on Wednesday. We're going to draw, I'll leave it in anticipation. You'll start drawing on Wednesday. Is there any question, Carol, from you? And then for anyone who's listening to the audio later on, if you have questions about the Identify slide assignment that you will be presenting on Wednesday and Friday, let me know if you have any questions about that. I would love it if at least half of you could go on Wednesday and half of you could go on Friday. And that way we see the presentations, because what's really important is for all of you to see what artwork is relevant and important to your classmates. Okay, there's each of you again come from a very different perspectives, and it's good to see what motivates you, what sparks your interest. Any questions with Carol? Who did you choose for your artist for the Identify slide?
Cave.
Kate?
Cave. C-A-V-E.
Cave. Okay.
Nick Cave.
Nick Cave. Okay. And what kind of art does he do?
He does the one with the racialism and for what's going on now, police brutality and stuff, and that motivates me a lot.
Yes, of course.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it does. I mean, it's so horrendous to witness. I mean, now we have this.
So interested.
Yeah. It's so important. We have this, and we will watch a video on Wednesday about understanding each other's perspective and seeing from each other's point of view. It's baffling that in the United States, the police can be so brutal. No one's safe with people like that around, and they're supposed to be the leaders of the community, but it's absolutely, it's horrendous, right? So what is your, yeah, I think that's a very important art to bring out. So I'm looking forward to that presentation. Do you have any questions about it?
What, do I have anything else to do on that? I don't think so.
No, if you have your slide and if you have a little description of what the slide is, who the artwork is, and why it's relevant to you, that's all. It's about a 5 minutes. So you don't have to plan, you don't have to plan 15 minutes. It's 5-minute presentation, 5 to 10 maximum. And I will show the pictures and you will talk about the artwork. Okay. Just like I have done last week. It'll be your floor, your class on Wednesday and Friday. Okay.
Because I think I sent something into you on it.
Perfect. So I will look. And if you need to have more questions tonight, feel free to call me. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know I was having problem. Oh, I think I supposed to meet with you today, maybe for 10 minutes.
If you have time, I'm available tonight. Okay.
Yeah, I think I made a request to talk to you today about 6:30.
Perfect.
Like about 5-10 minutes since I got you today. 5-10 minutes will fine. It's fine.
That's great. That sounds good to me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome. All right. And don't work too hard.
I know. So do I have anything to be doing otherwise for class now?
So I have for this week, identify slide is key. That presentation is the big one. I will have in the resource section, I will have some text from our book called Art for Everyone about art and politics. If you're interested in other people's history of the United States, there's also, I will put in the resources, the Howard Zinn book. It's a very interesting, it's a very different way to look at this culture and our history. And how it started. It wasn't found on the right particles. It wasn't found on the right ground. It was people, colonists who came with a mentality that the land is theirs, and everything on it is theirs. It's a very strange hierarchical thinking that people had when they started this country. And unfortunately, that ground has persisted. The inequality has persisted, and it's wrong. It's absolutely foundationally wrong, and it has to collapse. There's a structure now that is shifting and collapsing, and it should, because it's not the right ground. So we will talk about that when you introduce your artwork and identify slides. And again, if there's any questions that you have otherwise, we will also look at the work of William Kentridge on Wednesday, who South Africa has gone through a similar process, and it continues to go through similar processes because of the apartheid system that they had, right? So we will look at that. All right. Any other questions from anyone, or Carol, from you? Any other questions that you have for me for today? So all you have to do is identify slide and a little bit of reading that I'll have for you in the resource section. That's it for and those of you who haven't finished, I am from, of course, put that right into the discussion forum. And I think that's it for right now. We're going to continue drawing on Wednesday and Friday and listening to your presentations. All right. All right, Carol, I will see you on Wednesday morning. And I will talk to you later on tonight.
Okay.
All right. Have a good day. Take breaks. Go drink something. This is
okay.
This is the lesson today. Go have some food and drink. I'll talk to you later, okay? Take care.
All right.
Bye.